I didn't think, okay, this is the end. I can't do it. I think of how can I do it? Right. And that sort of opens the mind to say, what solutions do I have? Because at the end of the day, I could have said, I'm too young. But realistically, a young person can get a loan. So instead of me thinking, oh, I'm too young and sort of showing in the market's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, okay, let's look at this. I'm young, yes, but am I allowed to get a loan? Yes, I certainly can. Awesome. How am I going to do it? I need to speak to more people. Simple. So I'd say really sort of shift your mindset and always look for a solution, no matter what it is.
Guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing Stories, where, of course, we share real life stories of inspiration, persistence, perseverance. We take a deep dive into the mindset of individuals who have pushed past limits, overcome obstacles, step out of their comfort zone. And today in this program, I'm excited to welcome my friend Cristian Caponi to the show. Cristian, welcome to Keep On Pushing Stories.
Thanks for having me, Devon. Really appreciate it.
Indeed. So, we always start, Christian, by asking people what it is that they do. How do they serve? How do they bring value to the lives of others? So please do tell us that.
Yeah, sure. So a bit of a background sort of in regards to what I do. I managed to get three properties within 8 months' time. So in Australia, it's not so common for people to get, more than one investment property. I think only 1% of the population have more than three properties. So what I've sort of done is created a strategy when it comes to getting multiple investment properties and actually helping Australians get, past that barrier where they can finance more than one deal. So for myself, I really provide value to people, even from an educational standpoint, where they can learn how to, break out of their shell and actually learn how to invest in property without getting stuck and not being able to borrow. Because in Australia, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but we like a term called negative gearing, which is essentially get a really expensive property, sit on it for 30 years, and that's it. Which is definitely the opposite way of what you should be doing for investing. So
Yeah,
that's where I come in and try to provide value for clients.
indeed. All right. So if someone is interested in learning, how to invest in Australia, learning, benefiting from your expertise, how would they find you, Christian?
Yeah, so first of all, you definitely probably see me on Instagram, posting my rules, etc. And in terms of the experience, I like to say it's quite eye-opening, definitely, because it breaks through the belief of, you can only get one property, you can't, borrow money because properties are so expensive here, etc. So you really realize that there's another world out there. For example, I got my property on the other side of Australia, right? Not many people would do that for their first property, let alone that, just being fresh 18 years old. So it's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Thank you for sharing that. So, the question, the most important question, well, one of, is we'd love to know your keep on pushing story. We'd love to hear of a time, Christian, when you had to overcome an obstacle or stretch beyond your comfort zone in order to accomplish something. So, please do share that with us.
Yeah, so funny thing about my keep on pushing story is that it's still currently happening. Definitely, I will say my age is the sort of main factor on why I sort of need to keep on pushing. So, for example, dealing with banks and real estate agents has always been hard. Obviously, being so young, not having the greatest sort of credit score in that sense, so they would sort of look past you. So, I guess one of the main points, and I remember speaking to someone about this was when I was getting my first investment property, the broker, oh wow, that was a fun experience. He essentially sort of, shunned me away saying, you can't borrow money, you're so young, blah, blah, blah. But I said to myself, and I always use common sense, no, this can't be right, So what if I'm young? I'm going to continue to persevere. And my mom said, it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter as long as you can, borrow money and you're able to obtain the debt, then you're good to go. So I said, no, that's not right. I'm going to, basically keep on pushing, speak to multiple brokers. I spoke to like 1,000 real estate agents until one actually showed me a property because they said, you sound so young, why do I want to give you a property? So I actually had to prove, which not many people really have to do in buying a property. So I had to prove, I do want to buy a property. I am ready. So even now, every single day, I'm getting the same sort of objections, whether it be, for example, with a client, with getting my next finance still. I don't know why, but the banks and agents are always skeptical, which is quite fun, even though I do have properties. So I'd say every day of my life, to be honest with you, especially with the trajectory that I'm going through at the moment.
Yeah. Clarify, how old are you exactly?
Right now, I'm 19.
You're 19. So you
Yeah.
started this when you were 18.
Yeah. Okay. So I started investing property literally just turned 18 years old.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I think it was
Um,
like,
so I'm kind of curious because I thought I'd point that out because, there are so many people who want to do different things, and there always seems to be a barrier to entry. Is it
mm,
that they're too young, they're too old, they're
mm,
a female versus being a male, wrong ethnicity, wrong race, etc.
mm,
And here it is that you are stepping into a field, as I say, nobody's taking you seriously. The banks aren't taking you seriously. Uh,
mm,
Clients, real estate brokers are taking you seriously. What advice do you have, not necessarily for a young person, but a young
mm.
person, someone who is different, who sees how they are described as the barrier to entry? What advice
Yeah.
do you have for them?
Very simple, ask questions. So something that helped me to be, and I'm being dead serious. The first thing I did was I didn't think, okay, this is the end. I can't do it. I think of how can I do it? Right. And that sort of opens the mind to say, what solutions do I have? Because at the end of the day, I could have said, I'm too young. But realistically, a young person can get a loan. So instead of me thinking, oh, I'm too young and sort of showing in the market's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, okay, let's look at this. I'm young, yes, but am I allowed to get a loan? Yes, I certainly can. Awesome. How am I going to do it? I need to speak to more people. Simple. So I'd say really sort of shift your mindset and always look for a solution, no matter what it is.
Yeah. So when you say ask questions, I guess the first questions you should be asking uh, are of yourself. I mean, here's a
1,000%.
challenge. How can I get around it?
Oh, 1,000%. I generally believe that sort of helped me in everything, especially when it comes to property, because you'd find even in life, there's always a solution. When one door closes, another opens up. So you just got to find out where the opportunity is and go for it.
Yeah, when one door closes, another door opens. That's a line from Bob Marley as well,
Yeah.
in one of his songs. But it's
Of course,
absolutely
I love Bob
true.
Marley. Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, and I said I love Bob Marley.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we go through life, and we all have these goals and dreams that we want to achieve, and um, there may be this barrier to entry, and even after we get through the barriers to the entry, there are still other challenges. How did you um, deal with or overcome some of the other, once a bank decided to take you seriously or a broker decided that they would work with you? What were some of the other challenges that you encountered, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd say the main barrier was like having the initial conversation with them. So for example, real estate agents in Australia, they're quite, look, to put in simple words, I'd be quite skeptical when someone's young. So even to have a first conversation, like they wouldn't take you seriously. For example, if I called them and said, look, I want to make an offer, they think time waster. So to get past that barrier point, I built up a sort of skill of, talking to people. So I guess I was good with the way I was sort of move around things. So like let's say if the agent came to me and said, we're not going to offer you the property, whatever it may be. I like to ask a lot of questions and sort of break down someone's thoughts. So, what's the reason? If I have my finance, well, why can't I go ahead? And
Mhm.
then that's when they'd say, they sort of stumble, there's no real reason. So I said, okay, awesome, let's go ahead, let's get the deal done. And I remember doing that for my first property because I used to be in sales. So I was like, okay, let me use my sales techniques, trying to
Right.
squeeze my way through there. So I genuinely say in every conversation that always comes up, especially with the agents, is your finance going to go through? even though the deal's already signed on. With the banks. The banks were okay. It was mainly the broker that was a bit sort of tough to deal with. I remember my first broker, it was actually quite upsetting. My mum referred me a broker, and I remember speaking to him, and he just completely ghosted me. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? Is this how
Mhm.
the industry is? So I got a bit burned, but just the character and the type of person I am, I'm hungry. So I said, nah, I need to find the next person because not everyone's like that. There's got to be a good person out there.
Mhm. So it seems like you didn't believe in giving up, though. That what,
Oh
as you
no,
just said earlier, when one door closed, another opened, and so you know, people will always get ghosted by someone who they're depending on to help them move forward, or things will just happen that stand in your way in terms of an obstacle.
definitely.
Um, what is what? Talk to me a little bit more, if you could, Christian, about your mindset in just dealing with these challenges when they pop up.
Yeah, my mindset. Okay, look, I will be honest with you. I'm very humble, but in terms of mindset, I would say I'm very hungry. Very, very hungry. So since a young age, I knew what I sort of wanted to do. I did take a bit of a trajectory change. I went from, wanting to do construction, trading, all that stuff to ended up wanting to do real estate. So I'd say in anything I do, it's all about hunger and having being calm to find the solution. That's something I learned is very important. Because I've learned along the way that as a man thinks, so he does. So if I'm
Mhm.
constantly thinking negative and not putting solutions in my mind, then that's when issues start to come up. I've had so many situations where I could have thought negative and that would have destroyed me. Whereas I
Yeah,
said, no, let's look for a solution. So I'm very solution orientated, and on top of that, hunger. I put those two together in every day of my life, to be honest with you.
indeed. So you've learned to be calm, and obviously you're naturally hungry, which are
Mhm.
definitely a formula for success. Any other parting lesson would you like to share with us?
Probably one that I sort of touch base on. But it's a good formula. If you can stay calm, always think of a solution. I generally believe you can get through anything in life, no matter how big or small the issue is. Because at the end of the day, when you always face with something, and this is probably more important than knowledge of money or anything like that, when you're faced with something in general, family, friends, you always have to think, what am I going to do, and what's the best solution for me? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to, hurt yourself. You just want to be going through life nice and calm. I don't really want to see any pivots go down. So then that's when you got to say, what's the solution and what do I need to do to get around this?
Yeah, I know what that feels like because life is filled with stormy seas, and when you allow yourself to get caught up in that kind of intensity and emotion as opposed to remaining calm, and so you can be clear-headed and see the solutions that are not right out in front of you. That is definitely a recipe for success.
Exactly.
Christian, you definitely epitomize the what I call the keep on pushing philosophy. You don't
Mhm.
let you know the barriers to entry, in this case, primarily your age, or the fact that someone will say no, close the door on you and ghost you. You don't allow that to stop you. You've found a way to keep on pushing despite the challenges. Um, Definitely an example for all of us, young and old or older, uh,
Yeah.
to follow. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for joining us and keep on pushing stories.
No, thank you so much, Devin. Much appreciated. And I will keep on pushing. So,
Indeed, indeed. Guys, if
cheers.
you found this valuable, if you like it, please share and, of course, follow. And you know the deal, man. Keep on pushing.